3, 2, 1. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Ted Jones World podcast. Before we get into this episode, this Thursday, as you're listening to this podcast, guys, we have the Ted Jones Comedy Show, 145 Bowery Street, Moxie Hotel, Lower East Side, January 19th, guys. Check the link in this YouTube video, and let's get on to the episode. Eric, what's up, buddy? How are you,
Good
man?
to see you, Ted Jones.
Dude.
Yeah.
A veteran in the comic industry. Coming in from Soho?
Yeah, coming from downtown. This is actually, I'm usually a late bird, but you know, this is early for me.
Oh yeah, okay. I know. I see you're out till super late running shows and everything. Are you from New York initially?
Yeah, from Queens originally.
What part of Queens?
Forest Hills.
Did you ever play at the Forest Hills Tennis Center over there?
No, I knew they used to have shows there and stuff. Were those like the Jewish shows or something like that?
No, I was just talking about like the tennis center in general, where they had the U.S. Open.
Oh, you're talking about no, there was something else. Yeah, you're talking about where they have the fucking like Mumford and Son.
You and Tom McCaffrey, did you guys grow up in the comedy scene together, or how did you guys link and start that podcast?
This is like we've known each other for a really long time, and we started doing shows years ago. And then we kind of reconnected maybe 8 or 9 years ago or something like that. And we started doing the LE2B podcast, which is a great podcast.
I guess we'll start from the beginning. How have you seen comedy change since you got into the game, like 20 years ago or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, close to that. One of the big changes, I think, I mean, Tom, like, he was always like kind of in the alt scene, and I wasn't really. I was more in the club scene and stuff. I used to think there used to be a big difference between the two scenes. I don't think there's much of a difference anymore as far as what the comedy goes on there. I mean, I think that back in the day, comedy was so separate. Now everyone sees comics from every different angle and every different kind of, there's so many venues to see comedians with the internet and stuff like that, that I feel like that, I mean, I used to get worried playing alt rooms, and now I have no problem with it.
Why in the past would you get worried about it?
Because I feel like in those alt rooms, some of the people were like, oh, look at this guy, he's trying, he's doing jokes. Yeah, you know, you have to act like you don't really care.
Right,
yeah,
and especially you feel like at a bar show, maybe on the Lower East Side in like the early 2000s, like people were not feeling that type of comedy.
No, because they're like, oh, look, he's like performing and stuff, you know. Tom used to always be good at that because he never seems like he's ever trying. You know? That's his thing. So he would do well with that. But like I would get more worried about doing shows in front of a bunch of 20-year-old hipsters than going into like Staten Island with like mafia guys. I could perform to those guys any day.
Do you feel like now it's different because TikTok allows everyone to kind of be their own performer, and now people appreciate the shows no matter where they are? Yeah,
and I also think the hipsters now who go to those alt clubs, everyone now in New York is like a transplant from somewhere else. So someone comes from Nebraska and then they come to like Bushwick and they think that they're like a real hipster. They're just 3 weeks separated from being a hipster, you know, or from being a hillbilly.
Growing up in Queens, I mean, was it cool to want to be involved in comedy?
No, I never even got into it till like after college. I didn't even think about it.
Where'd you go to college?
Harvard of the Hills.
Oh, okay.
SUNY Oneonta.
Dude, I literally thought Harvard of the Hills was like a branch of Harvard.
No.
Let's go to Harvard.
It's not the best school. I think it's gotten much better.
SUNY, no, it has. I think it's one of the better SUNY schools now.
But when I was there, the professor would literally, one of our professors made fun of the school. He goes, oh, welcome to Oneonta, the Harvard of the Hills. And he would roll his eyes because there was mountains up there and stuff. He was like literally shitting on the school. And I'm like, you teach here, you fucking idiot.
Now everyone just calls it the Harvard of the Hills?
No one calls it that. Just this one professor. And I'm like, but he was literally shitting on the college. You know?
Rude.
Yeah.
You got to get him fired, dude. Are you write a bit about him? This fucking guy.
Yeah, no. He was right at the time.
Did you do any stand-up up there?
Nah. It was after college. I don't know why. I just kind of fell into it. I think it was like bringer shows. I fell into a bringer shows.
Well, did you move into the city for a job after college and then you started to do the bringer shows? How'd that look?
Yeah, I did that. And I took a class and then I did a bringer show. And it was the first show I ever performed at, ever. And I've seen this a lot with comedians. The first show I ever did, I crushed.
Well, were your friends in the audience, friends and family?
Only a couple. I really planned my set and it was okay for a first, but I crushed. I think maybe the other comics on the show weren't good. I have no idea. But I've seen that before with brand new. A lot of times, people their first time on stage, they have this nervous energy, and they will actually do really well. It's just the second and third and 500th time after that. I mean, I would bomb. After that, I was like bombing consistently for years. I quit for a while because I was bombing so much. But the first time I went on, I killed, or close to it, I guess.
I think that's also kind of just like you're so excited to go on for the first time. Maybe sometimes you have like a shot or two.
Yeah, I think they introduce you up. They introduce you as like this is his first time on stage. So then people are like, oh, okay.
The endorphins are going, and then once you really get into it, you find out how difficult it is.
But I've seen it with comics in the last year or two. Like their first time, I'm like, it's just this weird, magical, nervous energy, and then when you do that, then you feel like, oh, I got this. I'm awesome. And then you don't realize that you are horrible, but you don't know it. So,
did you have any moments in comedy where doing comedy sometimes on the Lower East Side 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't as safe. Was there any times you did comedy and you were like, yo, I need to get off stage right now and get out of here? Okay. Not even bombing wise.
No,
just safety
on stage?
Wise. Yeah.
No, I mean, I feel more of that now after the Will Smith thing. I feel like people are a little more aggressive. I've seen a lot of incidents where I feel like the audience seems to be a little more aggressive with the comedians. And
drinking late night too. That's always an issue.
Drinking late. Yes.
I like comedy clubs.
So like I've noticed it's always the late shows. A lot of times they're on Fridays. People are tired and they're either drunk or they're high.
So what time do you think that is considered the late show? Like post 11 o'clock?
Yeah. Now, I did a show the other night. It was a late show and they were all high, which was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I would think so.
No one was laughing at the correct times. But what I liked about it was...
They were like on Zoom laughing?
Yeah.
With lag.
Yeah, but no one was yelling shit and stepping on your lines. So I almost like that more in a way, because when they're really drunk, it's like they just keep stepping on. You have to go faster on stage. I've told other comics, I'm like, don't pause. Even if you're like one of those slow comics, the second you pause, they're going to yell shit and they're going to put in their own punchlines.
Bro, and then that's also like social media these days, like you see people like guys like Mr. Beast every 2 seconds in a video. It's like, oh, pop up here, cut the time in between and all these things, making everything super quick. So, and people have the short attention span.
Yeah. And it's sad because I feel like the comedic pause has kind of gone away in comedy because I feel like people just can't wait, But there are certain comics who can really command the room, and like Tom is an example. He goes slow, but he's very experienced, so he can kind of command the room, so people really won't jump in as much. But I've seen newer comics, and they hold, and people see that they're not that experienced, and they just fucking jump in.
Well, going faster, that reminds me of a guy like Robin Williams, who I think it was known pretty well that he used to do cocaine before he go on stage. Oh yeah, so. Were a lot of comics, I guess, like years ago doing shit like that, and you could tell? As opposed to comics now will smoke weed and go on stage. I don't think any comics nowadays are, that like they're doing cocaine before they go on stage.
No. But let's see. Well, years ago, I once did Molly before I went on stage. I thought it was going to be a great idea, and it was not.
How long before did you do the Molly?
I wanted to time it right. Look, whatever, an hour or whatever. So I was like, all right, this is going to be cool. I'm going to go, because I had so much stage fright. For years, I had horrible stage fright. So I go, if I take the Molly, I'll be like so happy, and I'll be like, everyone will love me. And it didn't work out that way. I went on stage, I couldn't even speak. It was ridiculous. So don't do Molly before you go on stage.
Don't do Molly before the show. No, but I feel like some comics now feel comfortable smoking a little bit of weed, drinking like a drink or two. But I don't think, I'm not like that. I don't like smoking
I'll have a beer or two before I go on stage. And I would say there's a good amount of comics that they smoke up before they go on stage. So I don't care as long as they can perform.
Yeah, dude. As long as that's also the beauty of comedy. Nobody really tells you what to do if you're doing things correctly or doing well.
I did see one guy once a few years back where he always had to smoke up right before he went on stage. And I think this one time it was too much.
Because he smoked too much or didn't have the weed?
No, he smoked too much. It was just too much he smoked. And he went on stage and you could see for the first minute, he just couldn't speak. And then he kind of came back to earth. And I asked him after the show, I'm like, a little too much. And he's like, yeah.
That's hilarious.
I do a lot of shows like in the West Village. There's a lot of NYU kids there, and a lot of them are very woke. And
really,
yeah,
even on sensitive shit.
When things first opened after the pandemic, they were insanely sensitive because they didn't even know how to be a comedy audience. It had been a year before people could go inside and see comedy shows.
Right.
And all that stuff that was going on during the pandemic with the protests and everything. So for the first few months after the pandemic, I was getting groans on every joke. And I was almost thought, I'm like, I may have to quit because I think it's passed me by. They're so, and I wasn't even saying anything bad. I'm like, I don't even know what to say. I almost wanted to go on stage and go, tell me what to say, because I have no idea what to say anymore. I feel like 6 or 8 months later, people understood, yeah, it's okay. This is comedy. You have to laugh at some things. I'm not offensive, but it was a point where I like everything you would say that you would get a groan. I'm like, I don't even know how this is offensive at all.
What if bars started to put like holographic machines where the stage would be and bring in some of the best comics in the country who don't live in New York?
Yeah, I mean, one day that will happen. You know, during the pandemic,
did you do Zoom shows and shit? Oh,
I ran a Zoom show, yeah.
Okay.
And it's still going on. I don't run it anymore, but I really believed in it. And you would make some money doing it. People would hit you up and go, hey, you know, the shows weren't great, but like, hey, you want $50? And
well, but let me ask you this, Eric, because other comics who've come on here said that they don't like Zoom shows as much. Do you like it because you were running it and you felt like you got good feedback from the audience? Because the comics, I don't know if they like performing on.
I always thought the Zoom shows were better for comics who are good joke writers, because it's not about performing. There's no bells and whistles. You write good jokes. If a joke works really well on Zoom, unless it's like Zoom related, it's going to work well in front of an audience. And I came up with a lot of jokes during the pandemic that work really well. There was a lot of stuff I had on Zoom shows that didn't work at all, but I kind of feel like a lot of comics were kind of pussies, and they're like, dude, you know, this is what we have to do right now. Things will open up eventually, but you know, I believe in it. I feel like the technology's not there yet, but eventually, if you're a comic, there'll be so many ways to make money where you can just not even leave your house and do shows.
Where it is right now, like the only place to realistically do stand up and get up as many times as you need to get up is New York City. I mean, you can't be anywhere else. Even when I've spent time in LA, it's like seemingly impossible to do more than 2 shows in a night because you're going to get traffic somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone out there and I'll book a bunch of shows, and you know, always like guest spots and stuff. And like, oh, I got, you know, I call in favors, so I'll get like 3 or 4 spots in the night, you know, which is not.
Can you make it to those though?
No, but by the second one, I go, where's this next place? And they go,
yeah, literally, dude. North Hollywood to Venice.
Yeah, and I go, well, they'll
It'll
go,
take a day.
Yeah, they go, oh, it's 5 miles away. I'm like, oh, that's not bad. And then you GPS it, and it's like an hour and a half. You're like, fuck this.
Bro. And then sometimes the GPS isn't even right. Like it'll take way longer than that. I remember I left the hotel that we were staying at to go to North Hollywood, and it said it was like 2.5 miles. It'll take 20 minutes. Perfect. We leave an hour before the show thinking it's going to take 20 minutes. Ends up taking 45 minutes. Yeah. And then I also seem super unreliable when I'm telling the person that I'm going to, like, oh, I'll be there in 15 minutes. The Waze says 15 minutes, and then it ends up being 30 minutes. When in New York, it's almost impossible for something like that to happen because the subways are on time, your legs are on time, you know how long the Uber is going to take because there's not unpredictable traffic everywhere. So I mean, I always harp on how much I love New York, bro, as I'm sure you do too.
I mean, if you want to be a comic, it wasn't the best place to start, I don't think.
You don't think so?
No, I always think the best place to start is like your home area, get good, and then you move to New York, because when you start in New York, people see you really bad. They see you bombing, and some people never forget that.
Really?
You know? And you have to that's why I never sleep on a comic, because I'll see some comics who are horrible, and then a few years later they're amazing. You know?
It almost seems like if comics just stick with it, stick throughout the years of bombing, like it's hard not to get good.
Every comic, I mean, you want to name comics that are crushing it now.
That weren't so great initially.
Well,
is that what you mean?
Well, not even that. Just next level. I mean, a lot of these guys had talent anyway, but like Mark Norman or like Sam Morril and stuff like that. Like they were. I always saw them good, but like they worked insanely hard. Like the reason why they're where they are is because of how hard they worked. They would just do crazy amount of shows. Like Mark Norman, that guy would do he would just do every fucking show, like every show.
So Jared Waters, who's coming on in 3 days, actually.
Yeah.
I saw his notepad section on his phone, bro. He did over 1,000 shows in 2022. Mm-hmm. And his goal was to do 2 shows a night. So obviously next episode we'll talk to him about that. But like, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, I mean, the people who really love this and want to be famous, not even famous, just want to do this. They just want to be
as good as they can.
Yeah, and they also want to be on stage all the time.
Yeah,
you know, like Jared's an example of that. You know, like Ian Lara was another one who's like, you know, they just want to perform all the time. They don't fucking care.
Some people won't get up 1,000 times over their 10-year career.
Yeah,
it's almost a sure thing. Like to be, if you're not in New York City. Like if you're anywhere else and you get 100 shows in a year, you're fired up.
Yeah.
You get like 2 or 3 shows a week. Wow, that's great.
And especially like, I don't know, have you ever had multiple shows in a night? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, not more than 2 though.
Yeah, so if you like, I always feel like for some reason every day you turn over and you're kind of like your first show, you're still kind of rusty a little bit, even if you performed yesterday. I don't know why. This is just my theory. Okay. So then you get that one done, the first one, and then you do the second spot, and you're like, oh, I'm getting warm here. If you get to that third spot, you're like on fire. You are just on fire. And then after that, for me, it's almost like diminishing returns. And 4, I'm like, yeah, this is really good. And I've had spots where I do like 6, and by the time I get 6, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm saying anymore.
Right? Do you find yourself kind of repeating stuff?
Yeah, you're like, did I say this? You don't know what show this is. But some guys can. They'll feed off that and do 5 or 6. But
did you ever see Aaron Berg's 25 sets on Amazon?
Yeah, I remember when he was doing that.
It's crazy. I watched it like 3 months ago. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Aaron Berg, I mentioned him in the beginning of the episode. Great comic, works at the Stand. He put out a special type situation on Amazon Prime where he did 25 sets in one night, one Saturday, and in New York. It was crazy. Were you part of that night? Were you working that night?
No, I think I saw him at one of the places.
Yeah.
They were like shuffling him around.
Yeah,
like
dude, started at 4:30 in Queens, and then ended at like 2:45 in Times Square. Something crazy.
Yeah,
25 sets, and I think he was saying, but I'm not sure which set he started like just blanking, but I think probably like you said, like 5, 6. You kind of just, I don't even know what the disconnect is from 5 or 6, to 25 in one night.
I mean, he's so good at crowd work too. So he could just crowd work through one set anyway if he wanted. If you like forgot shit, you know. So yeah, that's pretty impressive. I like kind of like that record. That was the record I never used to like was when those big guys like was it Chappelle and Dane Cook, and they were like doing like 9-hour sets. Do you remember that years ago?
No.
Yeah, this was like 10 plus years ago. So I guess there was a record for the longest stand-up comedy set, and then Chappelle started
9 hours.
Yeah, it was like 5 hours, and then Chappelle did like 6, and then Dane Cook did 7. And I always thought, I don't know if they're really doing stand up for 9 hours. You're not really doing stand up.
I don't know. Well, Chappelle now, every time he goes up, it seems like he is not doing anything less than an hour.
Oh yeah, I mean he's one of those guys that his 9 hours I think was probably better than anyone.
Like when he stops in at the Stand, he's doing at least 2-hour shows, sometimes even longer than that.
But you know, if you do, once you hit a wall, then you're going to kind of get tired, and you're like, taking breaks a little bit.
Did you release an hour special?
No.
You ever think about doing it?
I want to work on that. Yeah, it's my next move.
YouTube, or what are your thoughts about streaming process or how YouTube is growing? Do you have any thoughts there? Media wise?
Yeah, I think all that stuff is good. TikTok, YouTube. I feel like that just those guys who just put out their own specials.
If you have like a good fan base, it seems like that could be the move. Instead of getting that one fat paycheck from whatever it is, Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, you continuously make money day after day, the more views it gets.
And I think those paychecks now are going down. I mean, maybe Chappelle.
For the streaming, you mean?
Yeah, maybe Chappelle will get the 20 million, but for everyone else, Netflix already said that we're not paying this money anymore to like just comics.
And then I saw that YouTube bought the rights for NFL Sunday.
Oh yeah,
billions of dollars. Yeah. So it seems like YouTube's, I don't want to say slowly taking over the game, but they're attracting a lot of attention. Just all the money that they're putting into it, shorts as well.
I mean, just anything. But I do think you recording it, and if no one buys it, I mean, you have to give some shit away for free. That's what you do on TikTok, and that's it.
And that's what we do like almost every night in comedy.
And this, shit for free. So I mean, it's The days, I don't even remember when people would tell me they would get those Comedy Central specials and they would give them like 10 grand or something.
And that seemed like back then, or I don't know how many years ago you're talking about, but it seemed like that was the only thing for comics to get, was that like 30 minutes or an hour Comedy Central special.
Yeah. And that's not a lot of money, I think, especially if you have a manager or agent or taxes. So it's like, what did you really get? And you just kind of burned all this. But you got a lot of exposure on Comedy Central.
Yeah.
Because they would show the shit over and over again.
Now I think, now it just seems like it's a YouTube channel, Comedy Central.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, they've had some difficulty. I think Netflix kind of passed them a little bit. But
what's been the best moment in comedy since you've been in New York doing it?
My best moment?
Yeah, bro. Broad question.
Yeah.
Digging back in those memories, bro.
No, I just always think of the bad stuff because it's funnier.
Well, what about the good stuff, though, bro?
Yeah, there's always a lot of good stuff.
All right, well, then what? I guess the bad stuff if it's funnier.
I just like telling bad stories about comedy. One time I was on stage and someone vomited on me. Projectile. Yeah. It was
distance.
Yeah, in fairness, he was laughing. He said it was a
oh my god, it was a laugh vomit.
Yeah, he did say that, but still as a comedian.
Well, it's like good luck, like when you get shit on by a bird, right? You're like, oh, well, I guess this is good luck.
Yeah, you have to make a joke. Like this is like, I get it, and you're like, oh, I guess not everyone in the crowd liked me,
Right.
But yeah, I've seen so much of that stuff. I just like the bad stories more. I mean, they're just because it's so fun. It's almost fun. It's so funny when you bomb too. I think it's hilarious. And once you reach like 5 years, everyone's always bombs. But when you hit a certain level, you kind of always know why you bombed. That's always the way I feel. Like, and sometimes it's your fault. Sometimes it's not your fault. People like don't blame the crowd. No, sometimes it's the crowd.
No. I would say that.
There's some really fucked up crowds that if Chris Rock wasn't famous, he couldn't do well in front of, it's like a fucking, it's like a riot going on.
That's something that I think also is a disconnect, that like when people go and see a specific person, they're going to laugh because they like that person. But when you go to a comedy club and this guy comes on stage, your mindset in the crowd is like arms crossed and be like, all right, bro, see if you can make me laugh.
Yeah.
When you go and you see like Dave Chappelle, or hopefully you see Ted Jones, you already like me, you're ready to laugh at anything I have to say.
Oh yeah. Maybe in a certain crowd, I'll start it as a 2, but it's my job to turn that to a 10.
How do you mean? Just like based off of, oh, look at this guy on stage.
What do you look at?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you could be the perfect person where like they look at you and you're like, you started at 10, but you could take that to a 2 if you suck, and people after the first minute go, oh, this person is everything that I want to see as a comic, but actually they're not funny. And it'll take a minute, but they'll realize. So,
and that's the thing I think about every specific person that goes and sees a comedy show. Like they can laugh at whatever they want to laugh at,
right?
Because you're not like with your girlfriend on the couch, like, oh, babe, have you seen this funny movie? Okay, wait, babe, this is such a funny scene. Like everything is new, so you're like you can decipher when you want to laugh at, what you want to laugh at, and I think that says a lot for comedy clubs because of the light in there. And sometimes you talk about these alt shows, some of these bar shows, bro, it's as bright as in here.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
the person sitting next to me, if I'm an audience member and the comic makes a racy joke, like I don't know if I want to laugh if there's a Puerto Rican person sitting next to me with this guy just made a Puerto
there's
Rican
a lot
joke.
of that. Yeah, or if like sometimes they look to see if the black person's laughing.
Yeah, make sure he's laughing. Okay, good. Now we can laugh.
But there's so much of that, and I think that but also I notice a lot of shows I do, there's a lot of women in the crowd. I feel like it's stand-up comedy is kind of like a safe place for
Well, it's
women.
kind of trendy though, bro, doing it in West Village and Soho, like where you're at near maybe NYU.
Yeah, but I also see like groups of women, and this is my theory on it, is that women sometimes are just tired of going to bars because they just get hit on all the time, so they want to go out with their friends and not be annoyed, so they'll go to a comedy club. And I'll see that. I'll see shows where it's like 90% women.
Wow.
So then I'll start to go through some of my jokes with some of the female comics. I'm like, this might be a little sexist. What do you think? And they'll tell me. I'm like, okay, I'm not using that.
It's unrelated, but I saw Harvey Weinstein was in the audience,
Oh,
and
I
this girl
remember that.
called him out. That was great. That was fresh.
Yeah, when I saw that girl who was really, what was her name? The one who got beer threw at her from the Trump person?
No, I forgot.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
We're popping her up right here.
Yeah.
No worries.
I can just tell by your jokes you voted for Biden.
Then the 33-year-old comic came back with this zinger.
I can tell by the fact that you're still talking when nobody wants you to that you voted for Trump. Make some noise if you wanted to shut up.
then it happened. The heckler's husband chucked a full can of beer right at her.
But they threw a beer at her and she missed and she was great. And then she got like a late night TV show for that, which was pretty cool, you know? So I had a theory that if I want to go on stage and have someone throw a 6-pack at me, so then I can have 6 late night TV shows.
There you go.
Does it work like that?
Yeah,
no?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, like a 6-pack of beer, the Natty Ice. Yeah. Did you have any side gigs working in the city in comedy?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, I was working in an office for years. It was the fucking worst.
What kind of stuff were you doing?
Mostly advertising. I just hated it. And I always tried to hide the comedy for people in the office because...
Wow, interesting. Because they're like, oh, let me come to a show.
Yeah, and then they're like, they want you to be funny. And I'm like, I'm not going to be funny.
Did you find it was easier, though, to hide it back then? Like before Instagram got huge and before TikTok got big? Because you just do it at night,
people found out pretty quickly.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, and even in the last 10 years, like I was at an office job and, you know, someone would find you on YouTube or something like that. And I'm like, motherfucker.
Yeah.
You know? But I just always hated that because then they think you're the funny guy in the office. And I'm like,
yeah, it's like,
not.
make me funny. That's always right. If you tell somebody you're a comedian, they're like, oh, tell me a joke right now. Your family support your comic dreams initially?
Yeah. They used to come to shows when I do those bringer shows where you had to bring people.
For those of you who don't know, why don't you explain what a bringer show is?
A bringer show is a show where when you're a new comic, you need to get on stage. You have to bring people to the show so they can fill the audience. It's how you got on stage, basically. So I would bring my parents a lot, and they hated it so much.
Really?
Yeah, they just got tired of it. And then when I moved past that, then they wanted to see me. And they would always go, hey, can we see you now? And I'm like, no, I don't want to. Because you were performing in front of your parents?
Yeah.
It's the worst. Yeah. So they're like, oh, you only invited us when you needed us to come. I'm like, yeah, exactly that. I used you. Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
Yeah, he would come, one sibling, he would come to a show too, here and there. Do you like family members at shows?
I don't mind it, to be honest.
Really?
I really just like put a wall in front. I like that atmosphere, and then maybe the friends will come. They're like good connections for me. My family are good networkers, I'd say, because like it seems like their friends are always interested in going to comedy shows, which is nice. You know what I mean?
That's good, yeah.
So I don't put on I don't really focus on who's in the crowd. Right? I just rather there are seats in the crowd, it's tough sometimes. Like you talk about bringers, and I understand that all these comedy clubs need to make money, bro. Like it's tough. And some of the comedy clubs who were open during the pandemic, they still have 6 months of rent to pay they weren't able to, gather money on. So
I have nothing against these things.
Yeah.
They keep the fucking lights on.
Yeah, definitely not. So I think like while it seems political, it's just what you got to do sometimes if you're really a comedy person.
Yeah, and I was telling some of this the other night too, is that like when you're a brand new comic, you do open mics and they can be so miserable. Those bringer shows give you an opportunity to perform on a real show in front of a real crowd, and you'll get a good response, and it kind of keeps you going. Because if you just a lot of people just start in the open mics and they can be so miserable.
Yeah, what's your opinion on open mics? Let's say somebody who's listening to this podcast have obviously listened many times because you're a fan of the pod, but just getting into comedy on the ground level.
Yeah, I think open mics are great. I didn't like doing them because I didn't like performing in front of comics because I just didn't like it.
But do you find that that's something you gotta learn to love?
Yeah. But the problem is comics always laugh at the things that audiences don't laugh at.
Right, that's true.
Smart references maybe, or really dark jokes. And sometimes the jokes are so dark, no real crowd, or if you melt down on stage. Every comic likes to see another comic melt down on stage. It's hilarious. I've had meltdowns on stage. I watch other people. It's so funny. But you see the transition. These guys do the open mics and then they start doing real shows. And I'm like, you're a performer now. And your open micers are like your friends. It's like performing in front of your friends who kind of know all your inside things. These are complete strangers, and you can't start with an anal rape joke. You can't do that. You can't start with a Holocaust joke. They have to know you first. I mean, you could do those jokes, but they better fucking like you first, And you see that. You see these guys. I remember there was one show I was on. They put this guy on, and he goes, "This guy is the king of the open mics."
Aye.
And then I was like, oh, this guy's going to bomb bad. And he did. Yeah.
That's funny with the pressure wise. Like I remember I heard Louis C.K. talk about he brought on Jerry Seinfeld onto stage one time and he was like, this is the funniest comic working right now. Jerry went and did like an hour and then came off stage, went up to Louis and was like, don't ever put pressure like that on someone ever again.
Yeah. No, but I think the guy wanted to be identified as
he came on stage he's like,
yeah. When the second he said that, every comic was all rooting for this guy to fail. It was just, you give yourself an intro like that. I mean, not ironically, which I don't think he was.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The king of open mics, literally. Erik, bro, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Before we get out of here, we're popping up your Instagram right here. So please let us know your Instagram.
ERIK Comic, Erik B Comic on Instagram.
Absolutely. Guys, check the link in this YouTube video and we'll get Erik on a Ted Jones comedy show very soon. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.